The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Guess what? If you see this face, that means you're back in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me on this lovely Wednesday afternoon. Glad to be here, and let's start the show off with Hard Knocks. Again, we had our third installment of Hard Knocks, and it was a good show. It was a good episode. The transition that they made, they started off the episode right, basically where they left off. They had Reggie Bush come up, or they didn't have him do it. Reggie Bush went up to, and it was always funny to me to see how it was or what it's like to see someone referencing you in the media, you actually watching someone talking negatively about the franchise. And they showed Jeff Ireland, the Dolphins GM, sitting eating at his desk in his office and listening to Carlos Dansby basically not rip the Dolphins organization, but essentially say that he didn't agree with the decision and that it was a surprise to all of the Dolphins, and that, you know, they wish that they would have given them some kind of notice. They felt like they didn't have Chad Johnson's back in all of this, you know, in that ordeal. And so, you know, if they'll do that to him, any of them, and he didn't say this, but in so many words is what he was saying, is if they'll do it to him, you know, anybody can get a knife in their back, so to speak. So Reggie Bush went up to Ireland and the head coach, Joe Philbin, and asked if they could have a meeting between himself, Carlos Dansby, and Jake Long. And those guys represent the leaders of the locker room, and they wanted to meet with him to talk about the Chad Johnson situation and to ask, you know, what can be done in the future to prevent something like this from happening. So that was a good look behind the scenes on who the Dolphins leaders are in the locker room. So that's present. Goes and shows you, you know, just how things evolve in a locker room. How do you figure out who your leaders are? How things are addressed when you have a problem with a coach or a GM or a decision that they've made. Because as players, it's your job to play. It's not your job to conduct matters of personnel. And so it was bold on the part of Reggie Bush to ask for that meeting, and it was very genuine, and I thought a great move by Philbin in Ireland to allow the meeting to take place and to talk to them to see how they feel and to take the pulse of the team, and also to find out how, you know, things like that, Carlos Dansby speaking out in the media, how situations like that can be avoided in the future. And so that was a great inside look at, you know, some insight as to how things go on behind closed doors again, which is what this show offers every week. And they continue to follow a lot of the players who are on the bubble, essentially trying to make this team, the tight ends, offensive linemen, and things of that nature. They're really focusing in on, of course, the tight ends. And Eric Steinbach, the guard that came back, not out of retirement, but off of an injury, and he just doesn't feel himself. And so they focused in on him as well. And so it was a great episode. Again, this show doesn't have many that aren't. And so I urge you to continue watching. It's a good watch, and you really get to see the personalities. I think that's what excites me the most, is you get to see the personality of a lot of these players and a lot of these coaches and members of their staff, and to see how they really are, because you only see the face that they put on in front of the cameras when the media is out in masses to talk about the Miami Dolphins. You don't really get to see them take off that mask. And this behind the scenes look is how they are with their players. It's how they are when the cameras aren't rolling, even though they are rolling. And so, again, love Hard Knocks. But let's move back into our lab reports. And finally, we have made it to our last two divisions. And we'll start with the NFC West. And the champions of the NFC West were the San Francisco 49ers. So we'll start there. And it's finally good to have someone step up and take control of this division. This division has just been floating around in space for the last 5 years, and no one really wanted to lay claim to the division, and you never knew who was going to win from year to year, and you didn't know what record was going to win this division from year to year. You might get 8-8 winning the division, you might get 9-7, and as the case 2 years ago, you might get 7-9 winning this division. This division has been sorry for a while now, and so the 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers, under the leadership of first-year head coach Jim Harbaugh, took a stranglehold of this division and made it theirs. They stuck their flag in the division and said, we're conquering this division. Anybody want to win this division, you have to come through us. Come see us. We're the bullies on the block now. And so it was a good declaration by the San Francisco 49ers. They made a very poignant point with a 13-3 mark last year, and they did it decisively. And one of the reasons they were able to do it was because of their defense. The San Francisco 49ers won the most games they have in franchise history since the 1997 season. And so their defense was a large part of what they were able to accomplish last year. The defense, they were not only great at just getting off of the field and stifling offenses, they did it in such a way that they only gave up 23 touchdowns as a whole for the entire 2011 season. And in addition to that, they only gave up 3 of those on the ground. Both of those were tops in the NFL. So you didn't score points against this team, and you definitely weren't going to do it on the ground. And so this defensive unit was special last year. I mean, the things that they were able to do on the field, that they were the reason why this 49ers team was so hard to beat. And you think about it, they forced 38 turnovers on defense last year. That was tied for tops with Green Bay in the whole entire National Football League. You wonder why Green Bay was so good? You wonder why San Francisco was so good? It's because their ability to get turnovers, force teams to turn the football over and cash it in for points. Now, the 49ers weren't going to wow you on offense. And I think the balance between their stifling, aggressive defense and their offense having a very passive temperament was a great balance. The defense was aggressive. The offense was less aggressive, very passive, in fact. And so in times they settled for field goals, but what they did was they continued to put points on the board because they knew the defense wasn't going to give up many points. So they scored more than enough points to win the game because the defense didn't need much. The defense would take whatever they gave them and run with it. And that's why this team was so dominant last year. And that leads us to our next point. Another strength of the 49ers is the ability to force turnovers on defense, but not turn it over themselves on offense. The 49ers had a plus-minus last year, and this is a big number in the NFL, plus-minus. Your ability to get turnovers versus your ability of turning the ball over. And their penchant for getting turnovers but not turning it over, they were a plus 28 in turnovers last year. Meaning they had 38 turnovers forced and they only turned it over 10 times themselves. And so they had a plus-minus of 28. That was tops in the National Football League last year. And so that means they took care of the football while making sure you didn't take care of the football. And they did a great job of getting turnovers and cashing those turnovers in for points. And again, this defense was so dominant last year. They sent 5 guys to the Pro Bowl and on the defensive side of the football, and all 5 of them were either first or second All-Pros in the National Football League. I mean, this team was dominant on defense. And so, look, if you can pack a top 5 run game and a top 5 defense, you're going to win a lot of football games in the National Football League because, again, running the football, controlling the clock and controlling the tempo of the game, not making mistakes, and playing solid to great defense will win you a lot of football games, or at least give you the chance to be in football games to win in the National Football League. And that's what the 49ers did better than anybody else in the National Football League in 2011. Frank Gore is also a strength of this team. And he's so unsung and he goes unnoticed. Myself, I'm very much guilty of overlooking Frank Gore at times because you think to yourself, okay, Frank Gore gets injured a lot, or, Frank Gore isn't as durable. He doesn't do as much. He's a threat to bust it out of the backfield and make a big play. But, what else does he do? Frank Gore does a lot for the San Francisco 49ers offense, and he's a workhorse for them. And he totes the rock. He's great in pass protection. He can catch it out of the backfield and make something happen. Frank Gore does a lot for this San Francisco 49ers offense. And until you look at his numbers, you really don't realize the fact that Frank Gore doesn't miss a lot of games. You go and look over his course of his career, he usually has a lot of nagging injuries and what may have you, but he still doesn't miss a lot of games. I was kind of floored by the amount of games that he's missed over the course of his career, because I thought it would be a lot more. I was one of these guys that just assume, oh yeah, Frank Gore is always hurt. He's got a hamstring, he's got a turf toe, or he's got a strained knee or a strained calf. He's always missing it. Not the case. Not the case. And so Frank Gore is a strength of this San Francisco 49ers team, because even when they weren't good, you could always count on Frank Gore to run the football. It's always nice to be able to have somebody you can hand the football to, whether you're a good football team or not, and know that they'll be there and they're dependable. And Frank Gore is that guy for the San Francisco 49ers. Then you move on to the weaknesses. And this team is on the cusp of becoming a triple P. There aren't many weaknesses to speak of. The one glaring weakness that the San Francisco 49ers had, ironically enough, was on the defensive side of the football. And it was the fact that they gave up too many plays of over 40 yards in the passing game. And what this really stems from is they're such an aggressive defense. Anytime that you're overly aggressive, you're going to get your hand caught in the cookie jar. You're going to get caught with your hand in the cookie jar. You know you're not supposed to be eating on any cookies right now. And they told you, wait, save those cookies for later. But the 49ers were too greedy. They wanted it all. They wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to have their dinner and their cookies as well. And so they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar several times. As a matter of fact, they got caught with it in the cookie jar 12 times. They gave up 12 plays of over 40 yards in the passing game. That's way too much for a defense of this caliber. And so what that tells me is they're taking risks. They're gambling, trying to make plays, trying to force turnovers, and they're giving up the big play because of it. And when you're as dominant on defense as they are, it's okay to do this, because what that says to me, though, is they're giving up big plays, but you don't score touchdowns from those plays. Those plays result in a 48-yard gain down to the 49ers' 21-yard line, in which you end up kicking a field goal. And so if you can keep teams out of the end zone, you're fine. You'll be fine in the end, as long as you can find. See, where most teams go wrong with that stat is either that's a 62-yard touchdown pass, or that's a 48-yard touchdown pass down to the Rams 21. 2 plays later, X team is in the end zone for a touchdown. Not with the 49ers. You get a big play, that's where it ends. And so that was their one weakness, something that they'll be looking to clean up in 2012. Moving right along to the camp battles, and again, the 49ers are poised to become a triple P. They have control of this division, and as of right now, it's looking like for now in the foreseeable future as well. And so you got to think that they'll be in the playoffs for the next 2 to 3 years minimum, just because of how dominant they have the potential to be in that division. And so there's not a lot of changes to be made. They have all of their starters on defense coming back. They have a couple of tweaks on the offense, especially along the offensive line that you need to worry about. You know, they got Alex Boone. I mean, they have Alex Boone starting at right guard now. But again, the minor tweaks, things that these aren't positions that are up for battle per se. They just have new guys filling in these roles, and they have to come in and step up and produce at the level that the last guy that was playing in that position was playing at. And so other than that, they're just looking to add depth to augment the talent that they already have along their front line on their positions. They're such a talented football team that, you know, their starting positions are just about locked up. And what they're trying to do now is they're trying to augment that talent by having depth behind it. And that's the one thing you can say that the 49ers really didn't have a lot of was depth. It showed in that NFC Championship game when Ted Ginn Jr. went down. They didn't have any depth for anyone to step in. You thought Kyle Williams was an adequate replacement. It proved not to be. It proved to be the ultimate thing that lost them the NFC Championship game, his ability to not be able to field punts in inclement weather. And so you just never know when the depth monster is going to come up and get you. And so the 49ers look to address that depth in the offseason in various spots. One of them being a backup quarterback position. This is somewhere that they felt like they needed to be reassured that if something happened to Alex Smith, they would have an insurance policy to step in and carry this team along, because as the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, your job is to move the sticks and don't turn the football over. The defense and the running game will do the rest. Your job is to just not make the defense's job any harder than it already is, and to move the team down the field. And if you can't get in the end zone, we'll just turn around and tell David Akers to put 3 points on the board, which is what they did in 2011. And so the 49ers want to feel comfortable that they have a guy that can do that if Alex Smith were to go down. And so they went out and got Josh Johnson from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to come in and compete for the backup quarterback position. He's going against second-year man Colin Kaepernick, and really it was Kaepernick's job to lose because he's comfortable in the system. He's been there for 2 seasons now. They love his upside. He's a very athletic quarterback, very mobile, someone that can move around the pocket and make things happen with his arm as well as his legs outside the pocket. He needs to become a better passer in the pocket, but they like what they see out of him. He's had a couple of great runs over this preseason thus far, and so he's looking like the guy to lock that job down. And so it's between him and Josh Johnson. Josh Johnson played for Jim Harbaugh at San Diego State in college before he got the job at Stanford. So that's why they brought him in. He's familiar with Harbaugh and his system and what it takes to be a quarterback under Jim Harbaugh. And so they brought him in here. But again, I think this is Colin Kaepernick's job to lose. It would take a very big performance out of Josh Johnson in the next preseason game or so, and for Colin Kaepernick to absolutely fall flat on his face for that job to be turned over to Josh Johnson, I think. As we transition on to the rookie watch, the 49ers, they saw a need at receiver, and they had the offense where it wanted it to be last year when they got to the playoffs. You know, find Crabtree on 3rd and 3. And this was an on-schedule, on-time offense. They just looked to move the sticks. They weren't looking to get you for a 27-yard gain through the air. They were fine with first down, 3-yard run from Frank Gore. Second down, a 5-yard stop to Michael Crabtree. 3rd and 2, a Frank Gore run, or a 5-yard out to Crabtree for a first down. I mean, they were fine with that. A 5-yard out or a 5-yard comeback to Vernon Davis or Delaney Walker, first down, move the sticks. They were fine with doing that all the way down the field until they couldn't get away with it anymore and kick a field goal if they couldn't get it in the end zone. And so the problem with that is if Crabtree isn't securing the football, which he didn't do in the NFC Championship game, and teams start keying in on him as your primary target along with Vernon Davis, the tight end, you need to have another option to go to. And the 49ers really didn't have a solid number 2 receiver across from Michael Crabtree. So they went out in free agency and grabbed Randy Moss and grabbed Mario Manningham. But they also went in the draft. They really overdid it. They went overkill at the receiver position, which is fine because you just want to stockpile as much depth as possible. And so they went and with their first round selection selected A.J. Jenkins, the wide receiver out of Illinois. And so in camp, coming out of camp early on, the report was he wasn't looking too good. And Harbaugh took offense to it, as he should, because he's a rookie. You don't need the media coming in and bashing and beating down a rookie draft pick. It's already hard enough coming into the league and having to focus in on your craft and get better at your job so that you can get on the field. You don't need to have the media beating down your player and making it that much harder. And so Harbaugh came out to his player, in this case A.J. Jenkins' defense, and told them that he's not only are these reports false, but he's going to make a liar out of a lot of these guys. And so they're looking for A.J. Jenkins to come in and be a guy that can stretch the field, get down the field, catch the ball, make something happen after he catches the ball. That's what the 49ers need because they don't do a lot of routes that are deep down the field. They want someone that can catch a 5-yard slant, beat the corner, split the linebacker and the safety, and take it to the house. They want people that can get on the field and get yak. And so A.J. Jenkins could be that guy for them. They're going to expect big things from him this year in his first year. And again, they have a lot of veteran receivers that can play this game, so they're not going to be begging him to come in and produce right away, but they're going to look for him to have production to help this team win games in 2012. You look at their second-round pick, and I just thought the 49ers just started to acquire an abundance of riches and resources. Their second pick, I thought they already had a nice, solid, rounded backfield when they went out and got Brandon Jacobs from the 49ers, from the Giants. And so the addition of their second-round pick, LaMichael James, the running back out of Oregon, it was a surprise to me. I didn't see that one coming. And I thought it was a good pickup for them, but I didn't think they needed it again because, again, I thought it was overkill. But when you don't have depth on your team, you look to acquire it everywhere. And Harbaugh is all about acquiring the best talent, no matter the position possible. And so to him, LaMichael James might have been the best player available on the board at that time, and he just decided to take him. You can never have too many athletes on your team. And so here's this guy that can really run. He's a speedster, out in space, hard to stop, hard to catch. If they can get LaMichael James out in space on a screen pass, on a draw play, get him out in space, he's going to make people miss, and he's going to be hard to catch from behind because he's such a fast running back. He was very productive at Oregon. As you move on, the fourth-round selection was a guard, Joe Looney, out of Wake Forest. Look, the 49ers love their offensive linemen to be maulers. They're a run-blocking line first and foremost. This gentleman here fits the mold. He's going to be someone that can come in, maul you in the run game, open up lanes, not overly athletic, but very big and strong. And so look for Joe Looney to be someone that can come in and help. And again, you got a rookie starting at guard, or a young guy starting at guard with Alex Boone. And so Joe Looney will be right there in case of an emergency. They're going to break the glass and pull Joe Looney out. They also went and signed ex-Cardinal, ex-Cowboy guard as well, Big Leonard Davis, as an insurance policy in case the Alex Boone experiment doesn't go over as well as they hope. So Joe Looney is another guy that's going to be able to step in and help them. They're hoping he doesn't have to play right away. They can develop him and mold him into the offensive lineman that they would like to plug in there for the next 8 to 10 years. Their fifth-round selection was Darius Fleming out of Notre Dame, and this is a linebacker out of Notre Dame, not the most athletic guy, but he makes the plays. He's a solid linebacker, and he can run, he can move. Again, not overly athletic. He's not going to wow you like these 49er linebackers that they have now. All of these guys have off-the-chart measurables. Tall, physically imposing, can run like the wind, in case of Patrick Willis, long like a Alden Smith, and just freakishly athletic like a Alden Smith, or just ever steady, like a Navarro Bowman, can get to sideline like Navarro Bowman. Darius Fleming is none of that. He's just going to be a solid contributor that's going to help bolster the linebacking core and, perform on special teams. And now the 49ers are going to have to wait to see what he can bring to the table, as he's been put on IR with he tore his ACL in offseason, and so they won't have his services this year. So they won't get to see what Darius Fleming will be able to do in the 2012 season. They'll have to wait till 2013 to find out what this guy can do on the football field. You move on to the 6th round picks, and they had 2 of them. Trent Robinson, free safety out of Michigan State. Again, another guy, solid at his position. He does everything correctly. He's a guy that's going to be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. He trusts his eyes. He does the things that it takes to be a solid safety, but he's not going to make any plays. He's not going to go out. And again, we talked about the 49ers having a defense that makes plays, causes turnovers. He's not a guy that's going to go out and take a risk and make a play. He's just going to do everything that he's supposed to do. If you tell him, get 15 yards of depth and be there to tackle the tight end on a corner route, that's exactly what he's going to do. He's not going to get 15 yards of depth and undercut that corner route and pick it off. He's just going to make sure he's there to try to knock the ball down or make the secure tackle. And so you're getting a solid player, but you're not getting a playmaker from Robinson, the free safety from Michigan State. You move on, and they took Jason Slowey, a center out of Western Oregon, and again, another guy, run blocker. Again, I don't even think he has a chance to really make this roster per se. He's a long shot to do so. He's just going to have to come in, work hard, show the 49ers that he's worth stashing on the practice squad and working with them. And maybe in a few years, he might be able to help contribute. Their last pick in the 7th round was the defensive end Cam Johnson out of Virginia. And this is a guy that has immense talent. All the talent in the world, probably could have went higher in the draft if not for his work ethic. On the field, you'll see one play out of Cam Johnson and you'll say, hey, this guy has the tools to be a top flight defensive end in this league. And then 3 plays later, you'll see Cam Johnson giving minimum effort to help his teammates succeed on a play. And those are the kind of plays that turn you off when speaking of Cam Johnson. He doesn't fight through double teams. He's not a guy that's going to be relentless whether he's getting blocked or not. He has to find a way to bring it on every play. That's a knock on him right now. And so we'll see if the 49ers can get all of that potential out of him on every single snap when he's on the field. If not, he's a 7th round selection that'll be looking for another job. That takes us to our experiment. And I titled this experiment, The San Francisco Treat. And so the 49ers have built themselves into a bully. And right now, they're treating the rest of the NFC West like chew toys and like chumps that they take money from. They have to pay rent to play in the NFC West. And so the 49ers are looking to treat the rest of that division as goons, and they're looking to treat themselves to their 6th NFL Super Bowl championship. So as we move forward, let's get into the research question. Was 2011 an anomaly for Alex Smith and the San Francisco 49ers, or are they legitimate Super Bowl contenders? And again, going forward, the playoffs won't be enough for this team. They've set the bar so high for themselves that just making the playoffs and getting a home playoff game won't do anymore. They shattered and exceeded expectations last year. Who thought that the 49ers were going to get out of that 2nd round matchup against the Saints? Raise your hand if you thought that they were going to get out of that 2nd round matchup. Yeah, I didn't think so. If you're not a 49ers fan, then you need to stop telling stories. You did not believe that the 49ers were going to beat the New Orleans Saints last year. You didn't. I was among the masses who thought that the Saints were going to the Super Bowl last year, and the 49ers came out and set the tone on that first possession of the game where they basically knocked Pierre Thomas out cold, forced a fumble, recovered it. And I thought that set the tone in the game, that they were the physical, aggressive, dominator of that game, and they were going to be that way throughout. Now, again, the Saints are explosive offense, and so they figured out ways to score on this defense. And again, the 49ers are susceptible to big plays, and they gave them up against the Saints. But their physicality and their will got them through that game. And so you have to ask yourself, though, is this team for real? Are you buying what the 49ers are selling? I like to believe that when you have this much talent on your team, and in that week of a division, it's hard not to be legit. The thing that makes me think that the 49ers are legit is the fact that they play tough teams. They beat tough teams. They played the Giants twice last year. Beat them once, could have beat them a second time and went to the Super Bowl. They've played some difficult teams. They played teams that, average teams in the league don't find a way to beat. And so I look at this 49ers team. The schedule gets a little tougher this year. You're going to really find out what they're made of. If they can find a way to be dominant again, then they will have established themselves as a force in the NFC conference. But let's go on to the hypothesis. If Alex Smith is more than a caretaker of the offense and the defense continues to be dominant against opposing offenses, then the San Francisco 49ers will win the NFC West and find themselves in the NFC Championship game once again. And so I thought Alex Smith did a great job of being a caretaker of this offense last year, but they need more from him, as it was evident in the playoffs last year. Against the Saints, he had to come out of that shell. The 49ers had been babysitting him all season long. 3-yard pass here, 4-yard pass there, 5-yard out here, 3-yard stop here, 4-yard slant here. He couldn't get away with that against the Saints. He had to drive the ball down the field, and he had to make big plays at the end of that ball game to win the 49ers the game, and that's exactly what he did. He showed the 49ers that if given more on his plate, he might be able to step up and be the guy that they need him to be to take that next step and win a Super Bowl. And you can't win a Super Bowl without scoring points. And the 49ers did not do a lot of point scoring last year. They kicked a lot of field goals. But it was okay because David Akers made a lot of field goals last year. And so they were able to get away with that. But at some point, you're going to have to know that your offense is going to have to be more than just a caretaker, more than just someone who is babysitting a lead. They're going to have to be someone that can extend the lead, can come back and gain a lead. And so the 49ers need Alex Smith to be more than a caretaker. I'm not asking him to play outside of his mind. I'm not asking him to play outside of his boundaries, because I thought Jim Harbaugh did a great job of coming in and giving him limitations, having him have a narrow focus and approach. This is what I want you to do. Concentrate on this. Don't worry about anything else. We'll take care of the rest. And that's exactly what Alex Smith did. Now feed him a little bit more. Ask him to do a little bit more. Ask him to do this and that and nothing else. Everything you did last year, but add these two facets to your game and keep having him grow as a quarterback each year, and maybe you'll have the pieces that you need to win that Super Bowl. Materials needed. Take the training wheels off Alex. We just spoke to that. They got to give this guy more responsibility in the offense, more responsibility in the passing game. If this leads to turnovers, then you scale it back. But you won't know unless you try. Give Alex more reins of this offense. Give him more to do. Make the offense a threat for opposing defenses, not just on the ground, but also in the passing game. Hey, You going to use all of that? You know how someone has a lot of food and you're looking at them and some of it looks really good. You're like, hey, you going to eat all of that? That's how I feel about the San Francisco 49ers and their acquiring of talent. In all these receivers they have. Are you really going to use all of those receivers with Alex Smith at quarterback? Are they going to be happy? Are you really going to use all those receivers? Are we talking A.J. Jenkins, Michael Crabtree, Randy Moss, Mario Manningham as well? You still got Kyle Williams. Ted Ginn Jr. is still on the roster. I just named 6 receivers. Can you get all of them to football? Can you keep them happy? You look at running back. You got Frank Gore, your workhorse. I thought Kendall Hunter did a great job last year. You throw LaMichael James in the mix. You added Brandon Jacobs. Is it enough carries for all these guys to go around? Again, you want to scale back Frank Gore. You don't want to run him into the ground. So I think it's great that you have running backs in the backfield that can give him a breather. But again, Kendall Hunter did a great job, I thought, last year. I thought adding Brandon Jacobs was just enough. It was a nice little finishing touch on that running back group. Now you add in LaMichael James. Is there enough carries for these guys? Is there enough touches for these guys in the offense? I don't know. Question is, are you going to use all of that? We'll see. Moving on. Snatches. Snatches. That's a game that we used to play in high school. Snatches is where you would take someone's stuff right as they were about to use it, and it was yours. And you couldn't get it back. If you agreed to play snatches with someone, you didn't get your... So you could be starving. Couldn't wait to go to lunch. Got your hands on a pepperoni pizza slice from Pizza Hut. And you're about to devour this slice of pizza. You can't wait. Stomach is growling. And somebody just walks by, snatches. That slice of pizza is no longer yours. That's what the San Francisco 49ers do to opposing offenses. Snatches. That's my football now. Give me that. They forced 38 turnovers last year. They were taking the ball away from opposing offenses. You don't want that? I'll take it. Snatches. Give me that. They did it quite often, and they were great at it. They, like I said, they're the new bullies on the block. What are you going to do? Are you going to tell Patrick Willis he can't have the football? Are you going to tell Justin Smith he can't have the football? I don't think so. Moving on. Running game, check. Defense, check. The 49ers pack a run game and a defense every game. You know what you're getting game in and game out. They're going to play defense and great defense, and they're going to run the football down your throat. Can you stop either one? Probably not. That's how you win 13 games and only lose 3 times, 4 if you count the playoffs. You got to have a formula in this league. You have to have an identity. The 49ers have that. They're going to run the football, and they're going to play sound defense. Is that always enough to win you games in the playoffs? No, because you got to be able to throw the football too and score from the passing game. But all in all, most teams in the league, you can beat them by just running the football effectively and playing stellar, stifling, suffocating defense. That's what the 49ers do. Check, check. Moving on to data. Alex Smith, 3,305 passing yards, 19 to 21 touchdowns, 6 to 8 interceptions, 61.2% completion percentage. Michael Crabtree, 72 to 80 grabs, 845 to 920 yards receiving, 6 to 8 touchdowns. Frank Gore, 230 to 250 carries for 1,075 to 1,120 rushing yards, 7 to 10 touchdowns. Vernon Davis, 68 to 78 grabs, 820 to 865 receiving yards, 6 to 9 touchdowns. Niners defense, forced 32 to 38 turnovers, get 41 to 47 sacks, 16.3 points per game given up, and 6 to 8 plays of over 40 yards given up. And that's the number that really needs to come down from 12 a year ago. The 49ers didn't give up that many points last year. They only gave up a shade under 15. And, I mean, shade over 15. And so that number I expected to go up because I thought they had an out-of-body experience on defense. You had guys like Carlos Rogers and Deshaun Golson just playing out of their minds. Seasons that they've never had and probably will never see again. Carlos Rogers came over from Washington, and he couldn't catch a cold in Washington. And I love Carlos Rogers. I wanted him to stay in Washington. I'm not like one of these other insane Washington fans who didn't realize the talent that Carlos Rogers brought to the table. He's our best cover corner. No matter if he didn't catch the ball or not, he was going to be around the ball. He was going to make a play on it. Whether he was going to force an incompletion or stop that receiver right wherever he caught the football, Carlos Rogers was going to be in the play. We couldn't say that about a lot of our corners. We couldn't say that about any of our corners when he was there, but him. And now he's gone, and look what he did. He went to San Francisco and picked off 6 passes. Just looked like a shutdown corner over there. Not quite a shutdown, but again, we toss that word around loosely. There's not many shutdown corners in the league anymore. But he was playing really, really good football. He was a second-team All-Pro last year. That's how good he was. And so you got to think that they're going to give up more points this year than they did last year just because guys were playing out of their minds last year. All right, on to the independent variable. And the 49ers offense isn't what you would call explosive. It's not C4, more like a firecracker. The offense wasn't designed to win the game. It was designed not to lose the game. And so when you do that, you put more pressure on your defense to be great. And the 49ers had no problem living up to that billing last year. They were a great defense. But if this offense can be more explosive, and I'm not talking about Philadelphia Eagle, New England Patriot, New Orleans Saints, Green Bay Packer explosive. I'm talking about just scoring, up over 21, 22 points a game. Just something modest. I'm not asking them to score 30 a game, but just be a better offense than you were a year ago. You didn't score any points last year. You didn't even score over 20 points last year. But you didn't have to because your defense was only giving up a shade over 15. So you were able to get away with that. You were fine. You were winning games 20-10. 13-3. You were fine winning games that way, and it's okay. A win is a win is a win is a win. But just imagine if you can get production out of your offense. Again, in the NFC Championship game, not scoring points didn't get it done. Now, again, the defense did their part. They held the Giants down. But ultimately, not being able to score points was the key to the 49ers ending their playoff run at the NFC Championship game and not moving further. So the dependent variable is if this team can score more points on the offensive end, then the 49ers will be a better football team for it. The defense can continue to be aggressive, and that number needs to come down of big plays given up as well, but they can continue to be aggressive. So what if you give up a few big plays as long as you're not giving up touchdowns, which they didn't do. They didn't give up touchdowns. They just give up big plays, stopped them, and made them kick field goals majority of those times. So if they can just be successful at what they do and get the offense to be better, score a little bit more points, this team will be a dangerous team in 2012. Constant. That's an easy one. It's the running game and Frank Gore. The 49ers run the football effectively. Even back to the days when they didn't win but 7 or 8 games or 5 games a season, Frank Gore was a constant. As a head coach, it has to be a good feeling to know whether I'm a 5-11 team or 11-5 team, I can turn around and hand the ball to number 21 and know that he's going to be effective for me either way. And that's what Frank Gore has done throughout his career for the 49ers. Been a constant and consistent force out of the backfield that opposing teams must game plan to stop. And even when they do that, he still manages to make things happen. That offensive line makes the smallest creases, and Frank Gore is great at getting small, sliding through holes, making himself disappear, and coming out of the other side of scrums victorious with the football running at full speed. Many people can't catch him from behind. And so Frank Gore has been the constant for the San Francisco 49ers since entering the league back in 2004. Moving on to the conclusion. Look, the 49ers are now the bullies of the NFC West. They're taking people's lunch money and they're spending it on things like LaMichael James and A.J. Jenkins, things they don't even need. That's what happens when you're a bully. You get disposable money to spend. And now they're doing it, and they're acquiring talent at various positions, looking to better their position in the NFC. They want to be the top dog out in the NFC. And that's attainable if they continue to do the things and build on what they did in the 2011 season. They have a window of opportunity that seems to be growing because of their talent, and all of their talent is relatively young. You look at one of their most talented players, Patrick Willis, he's a young pup. You know, the oldest talent that they have is probably Justice Smith, and he's a shade over 30. We all know that defensive line, that beef up front, it ages well. And so he's going to be good for another 4 or 5 years. They're solid at a lot of positions. And they're young at a lot. Aldon Smith came in last year as a rookie in limited snaps and got 14.5 sacks. Who does that in limited snaps? He only really played on third downs the majority of times. He would come in the game. He had a great celebration last year. He got a sack and ran back to the sideline and sat down and took his helmet off. That's what Aldon Smith provided for the 49ers last year. Running the game, get a sack, run off the field on third down. The 49ers are 12-4. I have them going 13-3, but realistically, they're probably a 12-4, 11-5 football team. Either one of those three records, 13-3, which is what I have them going, 12-4, which is what I really think they're going to be, or 11-5, all of those are good enough to win the NFC West. You don't have to worry about anybody riding your coattails or having to look over your shoulder. All of those are more than enough to win the NFC West, and I think that if the 49ers can get to 12 wins this season, that will be a big accomplishment because their schedule is tough. They play the Saints. They play the Patriots. They play the Packers. They play the Giants. They play all the upper echelon teams in the league. And so if they can find a way to get through this schedule and still look at the end of the season that they've gotten 12 or 13 or 11 victories, you got to say to yourself, we're battle-tested and ready to go to the playoffs and make this thing happen. So look for the San Francisco 49ers to be those bullies that they were last year in 2012. And that's going to do it for the 49ers, their lab report and their experiment. On the other side of this break, we'll move on and we'll talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Be back after this break.
Lab quiz. Lab quiz.
I'm back. And as I come back to you, I come back with a gift. The Arizona Cardinals and their lab report. And the Arizona Cardinals have went from NFC NFL laughingstock to a formidable team in the NFC. Now, again, they're not a triple P. They're not a team that is going to go and blow your mind with their play. But what the Cardinals have done is they've made themselves a relevant team in the NFL. They're no longer an easy victory. And a lot of that credit goes to head coach Ken Wisenhunt. He came in and he changed the culture of the Arizona Cardinals. They went from a joke, a team that you looked at on the schedule and said, that's a W, to a team that, especially if you have to play these guys in Arizona, it's a tough win. It's a tough out. The Cardinals are nobody's, whipping boy anymore. They can get it done and they can play against the top teams in this league. They may not beat them all the time, but they give them a run for their money. And so the reason they're able to do this is their first strength. They're a young and, keyword being and, talented team. A lot of teams are young, not necessarily talented. The Cardinals have both. They're young and they're talented. And so there's room for growth for this football team if they can just find a way to get that quarterback situation, which we'll talk about later, under control. There's a lot of talent on this team. I mean, and you talk about Larry Fitzgerald, who's not a spring chicken, but he's still one of the best in the game. You look at Sam Acho at linebacker, Darrell Washington at linebacker, Patrick Peterson out at corner, Ryan Williams at running back. There's a lot of young talent on the Cardinals roster. And so if you're a Cardinals fan, there's cause for optimism. There's a reason to be joyful about your team. You just have some things that you need to iron out, some issues that you need to have resolved in order to take that next step. But there's talent there, and that's always a good starting point. You move forward, and the next strength of the Cardinals is Patrick Peterson and that special teams return unit. How special they were in 2011. Patrick Peterson burst onto the NFL scene and electrified us all. His returns were not on, and what sets him apart from normal returners is this is a big guy. He's a thick runner. He's got speed, but he's so powerful. He breaks tackles. See, Devin Hester, what makes him different and sets him apart and makes him a lot like a lot of the other returners that we've seen over the years that were great, is that you don't get to touch Devin Hester. He doesn't bounce off of tackles. You don't get to touch him. They open up a hole, and Devin does the rest. He makes people miss and outruns angles. You don't get a hand on Devin. Patrick Peterson runs through piles, breaks through tackles, bounces off tacklers and would-be defenders, spins off of people. He's like a pinball and then scores and then turns on the jets and scores. And it's a joy to watch because you rarely see a combination of speed and power come out of a returner. Returners are usually shifty guys who make you miss and then use speed to get to the end zone. Patrick Peterson can outrun you or run you over. And what he was able to do, he won a few games in the 2011 season on punt returns. He returned 4 punts for touchdowns. He led the league in punt returns for touchdowns last year with 4. The closest person to him was, you guessed it, Devin Hester. He overshadowed Hester, who only had 2. He was the Pro Bowl participant for the NFC, and not Hester for the first time in years. And it was because he was able to get in the end zone. He led the league with 5 returns over 40 yards last year. And so he was electrifying, and he was part of the reason why the Arizona Cardinals were able to turn around that 1-6 start and make it to 8-8 last year. He's definitely a strength for the Arizona Cardinals moving forward. Gotta love that guy and the excitement he brings to that special teams unit. And last but not least, you're talking strengths, you're talking Arizona Cardinals, you must be talking about Larry Fitzgerald. If Calvin Johnson is 1A, Larry Fitzgerald is 1B in terms of best receivers in the National Football League. You can't talk best receivers in the league and omit Larry Fitzgerald. If you do, you're making an honest mistake. And it's easy to get sidetracked and say, oh, Larry's out in Arizona. He's got bad quarterbacks. What could he be doing? I'll tell you what he could be doing. Setting career highs in yards with over 1,400, 17 yards per catch on only 80 grabs, and still managing to catch over 10 touchdowns in a season where his quarterbacks were Kevin Kolb and John Skelton. And you might be able to say that they sprinkled in a little bit of Richard Bartell at some point. It was ugly out there at quarterback last year. No matter what the circumstances, Larry is going to get his. And that's what I had to realize. I kept trying to downplay his numbers because I'm like, he can't be doing this well. He doesn't have a quarterback. Larry doesn't care who his quarterback is. Just get him the football. He'll do the rest. Those are amazing numbers when you think about the Cardinals quarterback situation. How did he make it to 1,400 yards? You got players with quarterbacks who pass for 5,000 yards and nobody sniffs 1,200 yards. Again, a lot of times that has to do with balance. But still, Larry Fitzgerald went over 1,400 yards last year with Kevin Kolb and John Skelton as his quarterback. Think about that for a second. Process that. This man is an animal at the wide receiver position. His combination of sneaky speed, size, leaping ability, sheer physicality, and hands that mirror Velcro is unmatched in this league, maybe only by Calvin Johnson. And I don't even think Calvin Johnson catches the ball as cleanly as Larry Fitzgerald does. So we're talking about a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer and an absolute monster. I feel bad for Larry Fitzgerald. I really do. Because you always have to think, what if Larry Fitzgerald had an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady, a Drew Brees, or if he just had a Joe Flacco at quarterback? How good would this man be? You never really know. We only got a glimpse of that when he had Kurt Warner at quarterback. We saw how nasty he could be when given the tools at quarterback. And the bad part is we may never see that sort of dominance in the playoffs, or Larry might not even get that chance again because he may never have the quarterback to match his talents out at the wide receiver position. We talk weaknesses, and with the Cardinals, point blank and simple, it's the offensive line. The Cardinals' offensive line has been a mess for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and it continues to be a problem this year. I mean, throughout the preseason, if you've been watching the Cardinals at all, I'm pretty sure a lot of you watched a little bit of the Hall of Fame game. Their quarterbacks are always under duress. And this has been an ongoing theme for the Cardinals for the last few seasons. And just going back to the last 2 seasons, they've given up over 100 sacks in the last 2 seasons. That's a mind-boggling number. That means your quarterbacks don't get a chance to throw the football. One of 2 things are happening. The line is breaking down, or your quarterbacks are not being decisive enough in the pocket. And I want to attribute a lot of their sacks to their offensive line just not being a good offensive line and not being able to protect the quarterbacks long enough to allow routes to develop. In this preseason, you've seen a lot of sacks come out of Kevin Kolb, not being decisive in the pocket, not understanding where he needs to go with the football, and not realizing that there needs to be a clock in his head, and that if he doesn't get the ball off in time, he needs to get rid of it. And so a lot of the sacks can be attributed to the quarterbacks not doing their job in the preseason, but this line is not good. And they just had a devastating blow dealt to them, losing starting left tackle Levi Brown, arguably the best lineman on their offensive line, and the veteran presence that he brought to that line is now gone for the season. He tore his pec muscle, and so he's gone for the season. And so now you have the task. You were already a subpar line, and now you have the task of addressing the most important position along your offensive line, your quarterback's blind spot. And so the Cardinals have to shore this up, or they won't be the team that they want to be in 2012. It's been an ongoing problem, and again, it's looking like it's going to be a problem again in 2012. They have to fix this because this is a glaring weakness for this football team. You move on to camp battles, and probably the most important and most talked about camp battle in the league, arguably. I mean, you have the Seahawks in their camp battle at quarterback, but the Cardinals quarterback situation mirrors that in Seattle. The only difference is that they don't have the talent at quarterback, or at least the potential to have talent that Seattle does. They just got a couple of guys back there who, can get it done if given an opportunity, but you haven't seen it in long stretches, so you can't trust either one of them. Kevin Kolb started out the season last year, and he led, and they went and they paid him a lot of money to be a starter from Philadelphia, and he started the season 1-6 last year, and he got injured, and his play wasn't that well, and so they put John Skelton in, and a little-known commodity out of Fordham, and Skelton comes in, and he starts winning ball games. He won over the Arizona Cardinal locker room. And he went 6-2 in games that he played and 5-2 as a starter last year. And so I thought that warranted him starting as the quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals in 2012. I was wrong. And the reason why I was wrong is because in the NFL, you must follow the paper trail. And if you're following the Arizona Cardinals paper trail, it leads straight to Kevin Kolb. They paid him a lot of money to be their starting quarterback, not to be a backup. And so they are giving him every opportunity to win the starting job, and he is giving them every opportunity to take it back. But the only thing saving him, his saving grace, has been the line is so bad. Skelton hasn't looked that good either. When he's had opportunities to submit him as being the starting quarterback, he hasn't looked sharp. And so the Cardinals need to address this situation. They don't know what they're going to do, honestly. They drafted a rookie quarterback, Ryan Lindley, out of San Diego State. And you got to think that in not too far distant future, he might be the answer at quarterback. And so they're just trying to buy time with these quarterbacks. If Kolb is not, they really want Kevin Kolb to step up because they're paying him starters money in this league. They want him to step up and be the leader of this team. I just don't know if he has it in him. I don't. I watch Kevin Kolb and I see a guy who is worrying about the pass rush more than worrying about delivering the football down the field. He's seeing ghosts right now. Even when the rush isn't there, in his head, it's there. And so he's pulling the ball down, taking his eyes off of downfield and looking to make something happen with his legs. And normally it's running into a sack or running into intentional grounding. And so that's a battle definitely worth keeping an eye on. I don't know who's going to get the nod. If I had to guess, I say it'd be Kolb just because they want him to succeed. They're paying him the money and they want him to win the job. You move on, and Stuart Bradley came over from the Philadelphia Eagles with aspirations of being a starting linebacker for the Arizona Cardinals. He has yet to fulfill his objective of being a starter, and it's been because of veteran linebacker Paris Leonard. He's been a veteran in this league who's got it done, been a reliable linebacker who doesn't miss games, and he is where he's supposed to be, and he makes the plays that he's supposed to make. And so Bradley hasn't been able to crack the starting lineup. They haven't been overly impressed with him since coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles. And Lennon went down in this camp with an injury and gave Bradley a chance to play, and he looked good. But again, I believe when Paris Leonard comes back healthy, he just came back recently, and he'll get his starting spot back. And now Bradley can show them on film and on the field, look, I'm ready, I'm poised, I'm ready to take over at this position because, again, Lennon is long in the tooth. And they could use some more youth along that linebacking core. They have plenty of it already. What's one more guy going to hurt? And so if Bradley can show them that he's the guy that they thought they were getting from Philadelphia, he might be able to sneak in there and be one of their starting inside linebackers. But right now that job goes to Paris Leonard. As we proceed to the rookie watch, the Cardinals were busy in the draft trying to address needs. And when you're a team that goes 8-8 on the cusp of a playoff berth, you feel like every draft pick is important because it's addressing some sort of need. And the Cardinals look to do that in the 2012 draft, their first selection. Michael Floyd, the wide receiver out of Notre Dame. And they thought that he was going to come in and be Anquan Bolden Jr. And that's exactly what they drafted him to be. They didn't want him to do anything else but come in and complement Larry Fitzgerald, take away some of the pressure that defenses try to apply to Larry Fitzgerald by covering with 2 and 3 different defenders. This guy's running with the third team right now. This is unheard of for a first-round selection at wide receiver. You draft a guy that early in the draft at receiver, he's normally either a can't-miss prospect or someone that you feel like, I'm putting this guy on the field day one no matter what. And you listen to Floyd, and he'll sell you, hey, I got some good veterans in front of me. I got, Andre Roberts. Did you just say Andre Roberts to me? Is that the name that just came out of your mouth? Stop making excuses. Go out and work and take command of this offense and go and be the second receiver. Larry Fitzgerald has been waiting for someone to take command of that second wide receiver spot and help him since Anquan Bolden left town for Baltimore. He needs someone to help him. And as you can see, he has no problem doing it on his own. But I tell you what, this Arizona Cardinals offense would be a lot harder to stop if there was someone across from him. Michael Floyd has to step up. Running with the third team because you can't get it done is not going to help your cause. But that's who they spent their first round selection on. You look in the second round, the third round, excuse me, they got the cornerback Jamel Fleming from Oklahoma. And this is a guy out of Oklahoma, excuse me. He can move, he can run, he's athletic. He does not have the best technique in the world. And so you watch him and his fundamentals. He was able to get away with it because he was athletically superior to those in college ranks that he played against. He was able to, not have the best footwork, not turn over the right shoulder, not get out of his break cleanly because he was just more athletic than a majority of the guys he was playing against. That won't happen in the NFL. In order for him to take the next step and become a solid NFL defender, he's going to have to clean up a lot of those technicalities in his game and be more proficient in his footwork, turning over the right shoulder, not wasting motion and wasting steps, being more fluid in his transition from back pedal to full-out sprint. And so, again, this is a corner with a lot of upside, but he's going to have to work hard to tap into that potential. You move on, fourth-round pick, and the Cardinals were thrilled to get offensive tackle Bobby Massey from Ole Miss, and he's a guy that was an anchor at Ole Miss and was a solid tackle. You could count on him every week to get the job done, and so they're going to work with him to ensure that he's the guy who they think they drafted. They didn't have any idea that they were going to have to play him this year. They really wanted to groom him. But with the injury to Levi Brown, some things are going to have to be shuffled along that offensive line. He might have to play this year. And so that learning curve is going to have to be sped up tremendously. But if somebody can do it, I think Bobby Massey can do it because I liked his production in college. And he's just going to have to be a little bit more quicker off the football because he's a big, strong man. If he can get his hands on defenders, he'll be fine. But it's just getting out of his stance and moving his feet fast enough to get to elite pass rushers like DeMarcus Ware and Jared Allen and Jason Pierre-Paul. Those are the guys that are going to give him the most trouble, the ones that can bend. He's not a bender. He's not a guy that can bend over and get his hands. And when you can't bend and you get these defensive linemen or outside linebackers who can bend that corner, that's the worst thing in the world for a stiff tackle. And Bobby Massey is a stiff tackle. So he's going to have to work on that. Their fifth-round selection was Sino Kalatameti. And here's a guy who is going to be a mauler in the run game. He's a run blocker. And so he has to work on his pass protection. It's not his strong suit right now. If Kalatameti can get better at pass protecting, he'll be fine in this league, and he can be someone that the Cardinals could probably plug in at the guard position and get production out of him. But he's got to get his pass protection down pat. The sixth-round select, they had two. And Justin Bethel, the cornerback out of Presbyterian, you rarely hear of a corner that comes in highly touted as a special teamer out of college and come in the league and deliver. And that's what Justin Bethel has done. Watching the Oakland Raider preseason game that the Cardinals had, He blocked a punt, and this is what they brought him in. This is what they drafted him to do. They drafted him to be a special teams wizard. Come in, wreak havoc on field goals and punts, and get down and make tackles on punt and kickoff return. And he's doing that. He blocked the punt against the Raiders. And so you rarely see a guy come out of college and everybody's saying, hey, this guy can play special teams. He can block kicks for you. He has a long wingspan. He can jump out of the gym. And have them come in and immediately show you that this is what they can do. And that's what Justin Bethel has done, the 6th-round corner out of Presbyterian. You look at their other 6th-round selection. I spoke about him briefly earlier. Ryan Lindley, the quarterback out of San Diego State. Again, with the issues at quarterback. He's someone next year, 2 years from now, you could be talking about possibly being the starter of the Arizona Cardinals. He's a little erratic, especially when he's trying to push the ball down the field. But he has a big arm. He can throw to all portions of the field. He's not athletic, but he can move. And so he's a big, tall guy, 6'3". He can get it done. He just needs to be groomed, needs to be worked with, work on the fundamentals, learn how to be a better passer from the pocket, and be more accurate. But look, they can do much worse at quarterback than Ryan Lindley. And so what they have going on now, he can step right in the mix and compete for this job probably next year. As a rookie, he's got a lot to learn. You can't throw him in there. You got a couple of veterans in front of him or guys who have taken NFL snaps before. You got to let them battle it out. But he can come along and help them in the near future. The 7th-round selection, Nate Potter, tackle out of Boise State. This is going to be a project for the Cardinals because he's not an aggressive tackle. He's one of these guys that absorbs punishment. He's not going to go out and seek it. He's not going to wow you with his explosion. He's not going to explode off the ball and go find somebody to block in the run game. He's not going to punch somebody with a punch that's trying to rush the quarterback and stabilize and neutralize them. He's a guy that drops back in pass blocking, and he's looking to absorb contact, and so he's the kind of person that gets bull rushed right into the quarterback. And so he's going to have to work on his fundamentals, his technique, and learn how to anchor down. He's not a strong guy. He's a finesse tackle, and that's what Boise State was, a finesse offense. And so there's going to be a lot of work to be done there. If he even makes the team, they might use him as a project and put him on the practice squad and continue to work with him and see if they can get something out of him. The offensive line is a mess. They can use everybody they can get. So if they can just work with him, they'll use him down the line. And from there we go to experiment. And I dubbed this experiment House of Cards. The Cardinals have the requisite talent to make this thing happen. They have the cards in place. You look at Larry Fitzgerald. You look at Beanie Wells, had a career season last year. You add Ryan Williams, who was injured, to the mix at running back. They've got Patrick Peterson in special teams and at corner. They went out and signed William Gay. You still got Adrian Wilson, Pro Bowl caliber safety back there in your defensive backfield. I spoke to Darrell Washington and his impressive play at linebacker inside. Sam Acho in limited reps last year was able to compile 7.5 sacks. They got cards, and they're piling them up. But it's a house of cards. And until you get that quarterback that can stabilize all your house of cards, people are just going to pull that quarterback card out, and your whole pile of cards, your whole house of cards is going to come tumbling down. The Cardinals have to figure out this quarterback situation. Get somebody in there that can get the football to Larry Fitzgerald, that can stabilize this offense, that can stabilize this franchise. Until they do that, they'll just be another run-of-the-mill team with talent that's running in place. So you move on to the research question. Who is the right man for the job at QB? Can they really tell behind that offensive line? And can the Cardinals get the ball to Larry Fitzgerald consistently? All questions that are pertinent when you're talking about the 2012 Arizona Cardinals. Who's your quarterback? Is that offensive line going to be able to hold up and keep that quarterback upright? when you do decide who your quarterback is going to be. And if they can do those things, can that quarterback get the ball to Larry Fitzgerald consistently? That's self-explanatory. We move on to the hypothesis. If the Cardinals can settle in on a QB, keep him upright, have him play well, and get the defense and special teams to excel, then the Cardinals could possibly compete for a wild card playoff spot. Look, when you play solid defense, and the Cardinals don't quite do that yet, they play okay defense. It's not solid defense. It's not top half of the NFL defense. It's more of that middle to lower tier defense. When you play solid defense and play great special teams and do enough on offense, when you have Larry Fitzgerald, you're going to do enough on offense. You're going to have a chance to win games. And so this defense isn't terrible. They're just not where you need them to be. This offense is not terrible, but it's not where you need it to be. Their special teams is dynamite. They have one of the best special teams in all of football. So you add those three facets of the game together, and you get average. You get subpar or below average plus above average equals average. And so they have to find a way to elevate the play of the defense and the offense to match the play of their special teams. If they can do that, they were 8-8 last year, and they weren't great on offense or defense. They were 8-8. They were right there. I mean, 9-7 got you into the playoffs in the NFC last year. I don't think that's going to get you in this year. But again, if you can build upon that 8-8 record, who knows what you can do. So we go on to materials needed. Corn on the cob. Look, teams are eating up Kevin Kolb. They're eating him like corn on the cob. And so he has to be better. If he gets this starting job, he can't be corn on the cob. He's got to go out there and thrive under the pressure of being the starting quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. They're paying him a lot of money. He needs to step up. He needs to be the guy that they've sought out for a trade to pay all this money to. And so they had a chance to cut ties with him and not have to pay him a boatload of money in the offseason. They ate that money. They bit the bullet because they thought that Kevin Kolb could be the guy if he could stay healthy. They thought that injuries had a lot to do with his production not being where they wanted it to be last year. And so he's starting to look like someone who isn't capable of playing quarterback at a high level in his league. And if you're the Cardinals, you don't want to see regression from Kolb, which is what it seems like you're getting. You want to see him improve and get better as a quarterback. And I think that offensive line not being able to protect for him is starting to affect him mentally. I think it's in his head now that I don't have time to go through my progressions. If my first read isn't open, I'm in trouble. I don't know what else to do because I'm going to get hit. And so they have to protect Kevin Kolb, and he has to play better. He can't be sitting there being eaten up like corn on the cob by opposing defenses. Johnny on the spot. If John Skelton gets the job, he has to be Johnny on the spot. He has to take full advantage of whatever opportunity comes his way. Look, you are a late round selection out of Fordham University, okay? You honestly, I'd say that you're not supposed to be in the league right now. You landed on the perfect team to give you an opportunity to be a starter in this league. You need to take full advantage of that opportunity because you will not get another opportunity after this one. If you don't prove to the Cardinals this year that you are the guy, chances are they're going to find someone to replace you and Kolb, and they're going to start anew. And if you can't get it done in Arizona, I don't know if you'll get another crack at it around the league. One thing that can be said for guys who play quarterback, you often get second and third opportunities as a backup around the league. You may be able to fill that capacity for someone, but you will never get the opportunity to be a starter in this league. You need to be Johnny on the spot. Step up, John Skelton. I think you are the answer for this team currently at quarterback, but you have to make plays when they present themselves. Patrick Peterson, special teams power activate. So it goes a little something like this. Patrick Peterson, special teams power activate. And that's what you're looking for from Patrick Peterson and that special teams unit, especially punt return. If you're an Arizona Cardinals fan, you're looking for them to power up, have Patrick Peterson bounce off of people, spin off of people, make things happen, and be the explosive return man that won you 2 ball games single-handedly and contributed in 4 others with touchdowns. He's a dangerous returner. I love watching this man return. He almost ran one back against the Oakland Raiders in their preseason game last week. And so I'm impressed with him. Every facet of his game, whether he's out at returning a punt or at cornerback, I think he's going to be a good cornerback in this league as well. And he said that's his goal, to not only be the best punt returner in all of football, but to be one of the better corners in the league as well. And so he has every attribute, every characteristic that you look for in a special player in terms of being a cornerback. He's got size, the power to jam guys at the line. If they beat him off the jam, he's got the speed to catch up. He can run with just about anybody. He's strong. He's thick. He's got a thick trunk and base. So you're not going to run him over. He's going to make tackles. I can't say enough about Patrick Peterson. I love his game. I love what he brings to the Cardinals special teams unit. And he's a dangerous asset for the Arizona Cardinals. Moving on to the next. Somebody get Larry the football, please. Larry Fitzgerald is a special talent in this league. You don't see guys come along like Larry Fitzgerald every day. He gets it on and off the field. He's a special person. And so Larry Fitzgerald makes things happen. You can overthrow the ball. You can underthrow the ball. But throw the ball to Larry Fitzgerald. He'll get it one way or another. I don't care if it's 6 inches off the ground, 6 inches too high, 6 inches too far to the left or the right, 3 yards too far, 3 yards underthrown. Just throw Larry Fitzgerald the ball. Either he'll catch it or it'll be incomplete. Just throw him the football. Get him the ball. I've been very disappointed in this preseason. They're not even looking his way at times. How can you not line up and just look at Larry and see if he has one-on-one coverage? I don't even care if he's double covered sometimes. Just like the Lions do. Implement, I don't care, throw the ball to Larry. Just throw it up to Larry. Implement that in the game plan. I don't care who's out there. Just throw it up to Larry. Give him a shot, see what happens. Maybe you'll get a PI. That should be in the playbook. These guys are looking away from Larry continuously in this preseason. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But if you want to be the quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals and you want to succeed, just throw the ball to Larry Fitzgerald. All right. Defense step to the forefront. This offense has a ways to go. They don't know who the quarterback is going to be. You have to be the catalyst. You have to carry this team until they figure it out on the offensive side of the football. The defense has the parts. They have Patrick Peterson. They have Adrian Wilson. They have Darrell Washington. They have Sam Acho. They have Darnell Dockett. They have pieces of. They have Calais Campbell. They have pieces along that defensive unit that can get it done. You have to be better. You need to be more consistent. You have to produce because the offense right now is a question mark. You need to be able to stabilize the whole team, do your part and then some to help compensate for the deficiencies that the offense may bring to the table. And we move on to data with that. Cards, quarterbacks. And I put quarterbacks because I expect it's something similar to the Redskins situation last year with John Beck and Rex Grossman. A funky situation that at some point, both quarterbacks are going to end up having to play at some point in the season. And so whether Skelton gets the job or Cobb gets the job, whether it's through injury or bad play, both of these quarterbacks are going to play and see the field this year. So Cards quarterbacks, 3,555 passing yards for 25 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, 57.2% completion percentage. Larry Fitzgerald, 78 to 86 grabs, 1,215 to 1,275 yards, and 7 to 10 touchdowns receiving. Those are insane numbers when you think about in context of who's going to be throwing him the football. He had over 1,400 receiving yards last year with these same two quarterbacks. Mind-boggling. And to think that he's going to have to try and do it again, and they look to be regressing, good luck, Larry. I'm on your side. I'm rooting for you. Good luck, my man. Beanie Wells had a career year last year, coming off of a knee injury. Over the offseason, they just did some procedure on his knee to clean it up. Let's hope Beanie can stay healthy because he looked good last year. He finally cracked 1,000 yards. I got him down for 225 to 240 carries, 985 to 1,025 yards, and 7 to 9 touchdowns. His numbers may come down a bit because now he has to share the load with Ryan Williams, and this guy's impressive. I like what I see out of Ryan Williams. They're one of their early round selections in the 2011 draft out of Virginia Tech. He's going to come in. He's going to open some eyes this year. Ryan Williams, 190 to 210 carries, 785 to 795 rushing yards, 3 to 5 touchdowns. That number can balloon to up closer towards 1,000 if he breaks the big runs that he's capable of. This is a special back, and he set college football on fire his freshman year. And I think he can do the same thing to the league if they're not paying attention and not aware of his talents and what he brings to the table. Cards defense. Forced 24 to 28 turnovers. You did not force turnovers. A year ago, you only forced 17. It's not a really good number. So that number needs to be raised exponentially. 24 to 28, while that's not the greatest of numbers, that's a really good number, especially when you're coming from 17. 40 to 44 sacks. You got after the quarterback last year. And so kudos to you for that. I told you Sam Acho in limited action got you 7.5 sacks and forced 4 fumbles. Okay, if you can get that kind of production out of him in limited snaps, he's starting this year. If he can continue to improve upon what he did and what he built in his rookie or in his 2011 campaign, that sack total could go up even more. And so you went from 42 last year to possibly 44, 45 this year. Let's see what you can do. Just keep that number consistent whatever you do, because getting after the quarterback leads to many other good things on the defensive side of the football. 20.3 points per game given up, and 6 to 8 plays of 40 yards given up. Special teams. I added this category in for the Cardinals because of how special Patrick Peterson and that punt return unit have been. Especially last year. I'm looking for 3 punt returns for touchdowns. You had 4 last year. 3 this year is not too far off the pace. I wouldn't be surprised if he went back and got 4, maybe 5 this year. He's so explosive. Every time he touches it, he's a liability to take it to the house. He's a threat to make something happen. I'm looking for 7 to 9 returns of over 20 yards. He had 7 last year. Or excuse me, he had 9 last year. So that's doable. And then 3 to 5 returns of over 40. He had 5 last year. He led the league with 5. That's doable for him again. And what people don't take into consideration is even if you don't take it to the house, if you get a 45-yard return to the other team's 39-yard line, you're in field goal range with a couple of yards. A first down, you're definitely in field goal range. And you're 4 first downs away from a touchdown at that point. So just getting big returns helps boost the morale and gives your offense a chance to put points on the board. On to the independent variable, and it starts with the O-line up front. Look, you guys have to protect whoever is in at quarterback. Whomever that may be, you have to keep that quarterback upright. And keeping that quarterback upright will allow that quarterback to survey the field, make better decisions with the football, help score more points, and more importantly, and most importantly, get the ball to Larry Fitzgerald. Okay? Getting the ball to Larry Fitzgerald is going to mean that your offense is going to score more points because Larry Fitzgerald equals big plays, which equals touchdowns or field goals. Get the ball to Larry Fitzgerald, and the only way that can happen is if the offensive line gives the quarterback time to throw the football. Allowing Larry Fitzgerald to get his hands on the football is such a key because, again, he's dangerous with the ball in his hands. He can score it from anywhere on the field. He makes big plays. He puts you in field goal range, puts points on the board, allows the defense to play better. And if the defense is playing better, you have Patrick Peterson awaiting another punt return opportunity. And if you have those two things happening, Patrick Peterson getting his hands on more balls, Larry Fitzgerald getting his hands on more balls, then you have a chance to win if you're the Arizona Cardinals. So that takes us to our dependent variable. And the Cardinals' offensive line being more efficient in protecting the quarterback, it leads to a domino effect. And it goes a little something like this. O-line protects, QB gets time, QB finds Fitzgerald, Fitzgerald scores touchdown, Cardinals take the lead, defense more aggressive with lead, defense forces more 3-and-outs, Patrick Peterson gets more opportunities to return punts, repeat the cycle. You repeat that cycle, end result is a possible Cardinals victory. And so this all starts with the offensive line being able to protect whoever is at quarterback. So that's your domino effect. And you got to say, offensive line has to step up in 2012. Moving on to the constant, Larry Fitzgerald. There's not much for me to say here other than I've been singing the praises of Larry Fitzgerald for years. I was among the first in my little circle of friends and the football fans that I know. I was the first to alert people of Larry Fitzgerald, like, look, this guy is a stud. He was at Pitt. He made plays. And I was trying to tell people that year that they went to the Super Bowl, I was telling people, look out for Larry Fitzgerald. He doesn't do anything but make plays. Big ones. And Larry Fitzgerald has been a constant from the day he stepped into the Arizona Cardinals locker room. You think about it, he's a receiver that he came into the league over 800 yards receiving. Since then, he's only had one season where he didn't attain over 1,000 yards, and he was at like 940-something that year. And so, look, this is a productive receiver in this league. This is a guy who gets it done no matter who's at quarterback. And so you have to feel for Larry Fitzgerald because not having a successful quarterback, I know it's getting to him. He made the comment this year that I wouldn't select myself in the first round of a fantasy league, or I would take Calvin Johnson over me because he knows who his quarterback is. You got to know that it's getting to Larry Fitzgerald that he doesn't know who his quarterback is. And we're going into the third week of the preseason. He has no clue who his quarterback is going to be. And he was on a podcast with Rich Eisen, and he told Rich, look, I had over 13 quarterbacks in my career, and Rich told him to name them, and he started running off quarterbacks, and Rich was kind of taken back because I don't think Rich realized just how many quarterbacks Larry Fitzgerald had played with throughout his career. You think of the Kurt Warner years and you think, man, he had a good run, but you don't realize before Kurt and after Kurt, Kurt was in the middle. He was sandwiched between bad quarterbacks and more bad quarterbacks. Kurt was sandwiched in the middle. And so you forget about the stretch before Kurt Warner, where he had a lot of Derek Andersons and those type of quarterbacks throwing him the foot, Matt Leinart and that kind of nonsense going on. And then you look at Sean King and all those kinds of guys. And then you look after, He's dealing with Kevin Kolb and John Skelton and more Matt Leinart. And look, it's been tough on Larry, but he's been consistent throughout. And this is why he's one of the best receivers in the league and a definite constant for the Arizona Cardinals. And so you move on to the conclusion. And the Arizona Cardinals are a classic example of a great what-if team. What if the Cardinals had a good/great quarterback situation? What if the Cardinals had a good offensive line? What if the Cardinals ever found a number 2 receiver not named Anquan Bolden? Now, what if? And so when you look at that, the Cardinals are not an enigma because you know what you're getting. You know you're getting stellar play out of Larry Fitzgerald. You know you're getting a crapshoot out of the quarterback position. You know you're going to get less than stellar play on offense and defense because of the offensive line, and the defense is a work in progress. They're still coming along. They're young. And so you ask yourself, what if we could fix some of these things? What kind of team would this be? And the Cardinals, if they can get some of these issues addressed before Larry Fitzgerald is 60 years old, they have a shot. Anytime you have a player on your team that is a top 5 player in this league, you have a shot. And Larry Fitzgerald is a top 5 player in this league, regardless of position. And so you have a chance. And so the Arizona Cardinals should be better than a 7-9 football team, but that's what I have them as. Because that uncertainty at quarterback is too much to overcome. They have a lot of talent, but it's too much uncertainty at the quarterback positions. And for that reason alone, I have them going 7-9. And so that's going to wrap it up for the Cardinals and their lab reporting experiment. And that's a touchdown. Throw it up. I want to tack on a quick extra point. Look, the preseason is week 3. And today's Wednesday. And so coming up, you got to keep your eye on a lot of these games because this is what these teams, they're putting their best product on the field going forward into the season, or at least what they perceive as their best product on the field in most cases. You're still going to have guys banged up, not ready to play. But if you're ready to go, they're probably going to be on the field in week 3 of the preseason. And so you have to keep your eye on your team specifically and see what they look like in week 3. See who's playing, who's not getting a lot of playing time. That's going to be indicative of who's going to make this roster and who's probably not in the favor of the coaches right now. These rosters are at 90 right now. After this 3rd preseason game on the 27th, we're going to cut these rosters down to 75. Then after that 4th preseason game, and I believe everyone plays on that Thursday, that next day, rosters will be cut to 53 guys. And so you'll have your 53-man roster. So start looking at these preseason games closely and start looking for who's on the field, who's doing what, who's where, and why. This is the most important week. This is the quote-unquote dress rehearsal for the regular season. And so watch these games closely, see who's out there. And that's going to do it for this episode of In the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me again. You can hit me up in the inbox at inthelaBroom@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook. Like me on Facebook at In the Lab Room. I'm on Twitter at In the Lab Room. That's the Twitter handle. Thank you for joining me again. I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. I'm out.